Well, that's the thing too, is that the people that are local or the frequent hikers, like 9 times out of 10, when there's a big storm, like the next day or that day, you've got all the locals are going out and breaking. Like the chance of you having to break trail on like Crawford Path is almost slim to none. Like there's always locals out there breaking out those trails. So it's the trails like Israel Ridge that like no one goes up, that you can have a fun time on, but you just need to be prepared. And I like the rotation process, but if you can find a Steve Mason, or like I know if I went with my wife, I'd have to break trail the whole way. So,
or if you went with me.
Matter of fact, that's true. Stop. I had to do that. Remember?
Yeah, man.
We did Mount Parker. You made me break trail the whole way.
Dude, that was like the worst. I was just gassed out from the get-go. Like literally.
Well,
it was the worst.
So, Steve, I took him out Mount Parker, and we had no view, and I was like, this sucks. But it was a fun day, but Stomp was a trooper. But I think that was when his hip was really starting to throw on him, and he was just too proud to admit that he was just getting old and needed a hip replacement.
God, that was...
Hey, gotta have a bad day sometimes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, so this dude broke it straight to the summit and then straight back. And if anybody's done that trail, it drops down to a call, and then you have to go up another couple hundred feet. So that's when Mike was like, starting to fade out a little bit. That was a hard day. It was snowing and wow.
Yeah, there was nobody. That's another good hike if you want to go and break trail and not see anybody. Mount Parker. No one's going up to the winter.
No kidding.
Broadcasting from the Woodpeckers studio in the great state of New Hampshire, welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stump.
Yep, we're rolling.
All right. Okay, so rough week, Stomp.
What's going on now?
I got the Rona. COVID.
The Tenderona? That's a bummer.
I was so funny. I was looking back at our, like, I feel like we did a COVID retrospective, 25 episodes ago. We declared COVID over.
Yes.
Dumb idea was that.
Yeah, that's true. That's really funny. So you're still with us. You survived it. How was it? Let's hear all the gory details.
Well, I mean, my wife says I am famous for being the man cold prototype. You know what I mean? You ever
just miserable, laying in bed.
Yeah, I'm the only person that's ever been sick in the world.
Right.
But it was hard. I'm still coughing a little bit. But I had like a fever, and I was knocked out for Tuesday and Wednesday. I couldn't even work. I just slept in the basement. But she locked me in the basement down here so I didn't poison anybody else. But I wouldn't recommend it. I would avoid it if you could.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it was a mild case, and c'est la vie.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Have you guys, Steve, have you gotten COVID yet, or have you been able to avoid it?
No, a couple close calls here, but so far so good.
Just keep it away. And you even got it?
No. If I haven't by now, I won't. I'm pretty convinced I got it way back in February of 20, because in my line of work and who I'm exposed to, it's like, come on, really? I mean, I don't know. I can't explain it, but anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, avoid COVID, audience, if you're listening and you can do it. It's not fun. It is ultimately it was 3 days worth of the flu. So I had temperature, aches, fatigue, and I was kind of down and out from Tuesday until Friday morning. But even over the weekend, I was just kind of tired. I wanted to go hiking, whatever, but I had to stay home.
Oh, dude, and I was stressing it too, because you're MIA and I have to edit the last episode, and I ask you to upload the file. 2 days later, it's still not uploaded. So I ask you one more time, and then all of a sudden you upload some random file that had nothing to do with what I was looking for. You definitely had Rona brain.
Well, I thought you meant upload that. I thought you meant upload that 30-second clip onto Facebook. So yeah, I was a little bit of a brain fog. So hopefully that won't be it. But I'm just looking here at the notes here. You have some show. You have like a note here, Stomp, that says show opener 1983 Waterville Skyline Loop.
Oh yeah,
what is that?
Yeah, well, we touched upon that in the past. The Skyline Loop is in Waterville Valley. The Waterville Recreational Organization down there finally finalized it, and basically it's 15 trails, 9 peaks, 5 4,000 footers. I don't know what the 1983 is, by the way. I have no idea what that is. I didn't write that.
Okay.
Yeah. So who knows? But check this out. It's 34 miles, 10,150 feet elevation gain, and 5 4,000 footers. I mean, it's pretty intense. So I know we mentioned it earlier.
Oh, I see. Now, are they? I'm trying to look here. So I'll link this in the show notes. But is there any? There's no shelters or camping on this loop. I mean, you can stealth or whatever, but there's no shelters in this loop.
That's a good question. I mean, the way it sort of interlaces Waterville, I guess you could dump into town occasionally. Looking at it now on this map, I mean, you head up Tecumseh, say you're going clockwise, you head up Tecumseh, and then up the Osceolas, down East Osceola, and then you come back Greeley Ponds Trail. So you do dump into towns before you go into the next loop, which is Scour and the Tri-Pyramids. So if you had to, you could. But, I mean, I think in the directions here, they're encouraging you to do it over a few days instead of one. But I'm sure there are plenty of listeners out there that are going to try to tackle this. I don't know. It looks fun.
You know, it looks like an awesome loop, and I hadn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard people doing like super loops like this, but I hadn't really
Super loops.
considered like. And how many miles is it total?
34.
34 miles, 10,000 feet of elevation gain. So you could do that in like a 2-day hike. So
Yeah.
I'll link this in the show notes. This is cool.
Yeah, really neat stuff. I think Waterville's trying to get into the whole hiking community there. I've heard over the years that they've been just struggling to stay afloat and everything else, and this might be their way to up the ante for some of their income, I suppose.
You know what they should do if they want to make some additional revenue is like Livermore, and then also, like Livermore would be perfect to have like a golf cart girl to sell like beer and snacks.
Well, I was
and
just going to say,
drive the golf
like a
cart.
Reckless cart, the drive up Reckless
car.
mobile.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And we'll park the food truck down there every once in a while.
exactly. Because Livermore, that place is always busy in the summer, so that's what I would do.
Yeah. So have Carolyn's hands warmed up yet from the Moosilauke hike?
They have, yeah. So I think we're all good. I did tell her about the windmill thing, and she was like, "Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense." But we'll have to test it. She's pretty tied up with school at this point, so I don't know if we'll get back out. But
Yeah.
you know, she's doing good, and I think she's still pretty proud of herself for doing her first big winter hike.
Yeah. Andy Cannon from Reklis and I got in a brief discussion about some studies. He sent studies to me sort of proving that cold finger effect, if you're grabbing an object in cold weather, that's going to lead to really cold burning fingertips pretty quickly. They were using thermal imagers, and people were holding cold objects, and what they found was it increased the cooling of the hands. At the same time, it was found that cooling begins with the tips of the longest fingers and starts very quickly, namely from the first minute after holding a cold object in your hand. Pretty fascinating. It reminds me of the screaming barfies. Do you remember that, Steve? The screaming barfies?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
someone on the team talks about that.
Yeah,
or the screaming ouchies or something like that.
Yeah, it's that phenomena where you're a climber, so either in the winter you're holding onto an ice axe or a pick or a hiking pole. That's the reason I brought this up, because it is pretty interesting. So you're squeezing this object, and then when you let go, that blood rushes back into your fingertips, and you get the burning, screaming barfies, which is just burning in pain for 2 to 5 minutes. And I guess studies show that 4% of people barf when they get this.
Wow.
Yeah, it's no joke. But there's some interesting solutions out there. There are heated gauntlet gloves, heated pole handles. That's actually a patent. I've not seen them yet, but I guess that's something that's in the works.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It's actually a good idea. Put some batteries in the top of the hiking poles and turn on the heat.
Yeah. It's a patent. yeah, we can link to it. It's pretty interesting.
All right. And then you got one more note. So Stomp's been in the script today. Usually I do the script, but you've been like, what? Oh, so Screaming
That's the
Barfies, you
Barfies.
already covered that then.
Yeah.
All right.
I got it covered, kid.
So, very good. All right. So next here is sponsors and coffee talk here. So
Yeah.
What do you got?
A quick shout out first to Rebecca Sockton-Sperry for a disease-free report. I read that today. Congratulations, Rebecca. That's been a long, long challenge for you, and we wish you the best.
really?
Did you see that? Yeah, that was posted earlier today, so it's pretty epic.
I'm going on right now. I'm going to give her a little heart.
Yeah, she's a fighter. She's got the spirit of a fighter. So keep up the good fight there, Rebecca. So for donations, let's see. We have Just Benny's or Just Ben's, maybe I don't know how it's pronounced, but they donated $5. Jennifer Lee donated $5, and this is a funny story. She sent a message to us saying, "Whenever I donate, it always comes up as quote unquote someone." So I called her out and just actually used her name for that donation. So I don't know why coffee does that, but it does, because we just got a donation today from someone. It just prompted me to mention that. So if you show up as someone, you might want to put your name in the little post. I think that's probably the best solution. And another comment: we do check our emails. So I'm not sure. Somebody's apparently sent an email and we missed it, or it just never came through. So we do check the emails. And then, of course, a quick shout out to Reklis. And, I'm going to save the shout out because we have Steve here in person, and he's going to shout out himself for quite a bit about the latest goings on at Reklis. So we hope that the sponsorship and everything's been working good. I think some people have been coming in to see you guys and making a point of saying, "Hey, we heard about you on the podcast." So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've been hearing stuff like that. That's awesome.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, back scratching,
Perfect partnership.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I have a plug. I've had this written down in my notebook for like months, and I haven't done it. But, and again, I don't know if this makes a difference, Stomp, or not. But I hear a bunch of other podcast people do it, and they say it makes a difference. So we have like a bunch of reviews on Apple. I think, like, I don't know, not really reviews. We had a couple of reviews, but we have a bunch of people that have given us like 5 stars or whatever. You can give us, if you don't want to give us 5, that's fine. Actually, probably, if you're not going to give us 5, don't bother. But if you want to like write a review or something, that'd be nice. We've never asked people to do that, but like write a review and give us 5 stars.
Does that help us, or does it make us show up in listings or something, or what?
We can charge Reklis more for sponsorship. Oh. No, I don't know if it. I don't know if I think it helps you like come up on search more frequently or something. I don't know.
Well, that's cool.
So
who knew?
Write us a review. If you have anything bad to say, send us email. We won't check it. But if you have a positive thing to do a review.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good plan.
Yes, exactly. Anything before I go do the show summary?
No, let's do it.
Okay, so welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. Tonight we're joined by our friend Steven from Reklis Brewing, who is going to talk beer, and he's going to help us clear out the topics folder by catching us up on a few winter hiking topics that we have not covered yet. This includes a snowshoe lesson, an explanation about butt sledding, and then we're going to do a deep dive on the Flume Gorge, and then I added on a discussion about hiking Mount Washington in the winter. So I have a couple of thoughts on the routes there. And then later in the show, we might do some White Mountain history. There's not a lot of search and rescue news, but we'll grab some if we have time. So I'm Mike,
and I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
All right. So normally we go right into beer talk, but before we do that, because I think it's going to take a while with Steve and updating on Reklis, have you guys heard about this guy Scott Benaroff? He's doing a southbound on the AT. You been watching this guy at all, Steve?
I haven't heard of this guy, no.
I just saw a post today. That's pretty epic.
You saw it today?
I just heard about it today.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm always skeptical about these things because it's like the guy's southbound. And when I first saw it, he was in Andover, Maine, which is still pretty far up there. But I looked at the date, and that was like early January or something like that. And he's made it into the whites at this point. And I haven't looked at the videos yet, but he's made it through. He's got three videos going through the Mahoozics.
Cold weather.
Going from Andover through the Mahoozics and out to Route 2. So that's the tough part. That is where...
lucking out with the snow.
That's where Arlette and Rich ran into trouble. I don't think they can make it through that section last year.
Yeah, that's intense. How's he doing it? Does he have active support meeting him as he goes, or is he doing the whole cash mailing system?
I don't know what he's doing.
We'll have to get him on.
Yeah, we'll see. I think he's going through the whites right now, but this is a year where it could work because I don't think the snow cover is that significant up in Maine.
Right.
Like when Arlette and Rich were trying, I think it was last year, they got bombed with snow so bad, like they had to bypass the whole like Grafton Notch area. They had to go down. They basically sidestepped it and went down Success Pond Road because they couldn't get through.
Gotcha.
But this guy was able to make it through, which is interesting. So he might make it.
Yeah, best of luck. What's his name again?
Yeah.
Scott?
His name is Scott Beneroff. And I don't know anything about this guy. I just saw it today, and I thought that was interesting because if he can do a southbound AT in the winter like that, then that's pretty badass.
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
That's super badass, yeah.
Although part of it is just like you're at the mercy of the weather. Like if you got bombed with snow in December, in January, like there's no way you're going to make it through Maine. I don't care how strong you are, but this guy, I think, timed it in a good year because it just, I don't know, you guys are up closer than I am, but Moosilauke didn't have like much snow cover at all. It was like maybe 4 or 5 inches and that was it.
Yeah, this past weekend, a couple of days ago, was really the first big storm we got, and it didn't amount to too much. So yeah, like you said, he's got a pretty lucky winter so far.
I would not want to have been out in that wind over the last 48 hours. Holy moly. We had a ton of blowdowns up here.
Yeah, cold weather's been insane with the wind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have like, I don't know what it is about the personality types of the people that do this stuff. Like Arlette is out on she's doing the North Country Trail, which is like 4,200 miles. And I know Rich is out there with her right now, and that's just insane. I think there's only been like 15 people that have completed that trail, I think it goes from Vermont to Michigan or something.
Mm-hmm. Wow. They're nuts, man. So, they're out there constantly.
Yeah, it's impressive. So now we're talking about beer here. Stop.
Yes.
So what are you drinking?
I'm actually having a margarita. It's like the only thing in the house. It's leftovers from when my folks were living with us this summer. I was like, at first I was like, I don't think I'm going to have anything. But then I was like, why not? What the hell? So no beer for me.
Yeah, I'm drinking. Have you guys heard of Stellwagen Beer Company?
I have not. How about you?
I don't think so.
Yeah. It's called the India Beer. It's an IPA, Inclusion Records it's called. So Stellwagen. I'm assuming it must be like the North Shore, Massachusetts or something. But it's
funky looking label. I love it.
Or how do you spell it?
Stellwagen, Stellwagon. Stellwagen Bank is like it's one of the large banks out in the North Atlantic, outside of Gloucester.
Ah, gotcha. Sounded German to me.
What are you drinking, Steve? Hopefully you're drinking a Reklis.
No, I'm taking a break from a Reklis beer tonight. I'm drinking something from the seacoast. It's called yeah, you can play the shame music. It's called Purple Dinosaur from Exeter Brewing Company. I've actually been trying to get my hands on this beer for a long time. They'll drop it on like a Friday, and it'll be sold out by Saturday. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky enough this past drop to get some, and this is my last one. So I figured it's a good occasion while I'm sitting down catching up with you guys.
Now, do you have to wait in line for this, or is it just like you time it?
No, there were no lines. That this brewery, Exeter, they don't have a tap room or anything, so they just do distribution. So they brew and bottle at their brewery, and they send it out to stores, and the stores sell out crazy fast.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, by the way, when we were on break, I went down to Chase Street Market in Plymouth like 2 or 3 times to grab your selection. It's funny, first time I grabbed the Mount Eustace, that was gone. after the first time. I did get it the first time, but then that was gone. Like the next time I went down there, so I ended up with like I think it was the IPA that I had up when my wife and I visited. But anyway, great selection. It's nice that they're local and it's available.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sells out pretty fast, so we're able to keep it fresh.
So, what is the latest and greatest goings on at Reklis, Steve? Anything you want to plug that's going on over there?
Yeah, we've definitely got some cool stuff coming up. The first one, I don't want to say too much, but a recent guest of yours might be coming up to Reklis to do some sort of collaboration. So stay tuned. I don't have too much info to give out in that regard, but just a little teaser.
Awesome.
Then the carry-out stout that we brew and donate to PEMI whenever we brew it is finally going to get its own customized label. Right now we just have like a handwritten label that's more of a generic style, but we've got a local artist, Kirsten, who drew up something really cool for us. I actually meant to send it to you guys, but I will in a little while here. I'll find that file and I'll send it to you guys so you can preview it. It's pretty cool. So that'll be coming out soon. That's going to be exciting. So you'll be able to recognize it from afar in the store. You can say, "Hey, I know that label."
I still have the early proof of you guys carrying that keg with the construction hats on.
Oh my god.
That was awesome, though.
Yeah, we've come a long way since then. This one's much more professionally done. Yeah, it's real cool. It's like an old external frame backpack with some gear lashed to the outside, and in the background you can see the like trail map of like the PEMI Loop. It's really cool stuff. Kirsten's great. She does almost all of our can art, unless it's going to be just something digital. And the last big exciting piece of news for Reklis is coming up at the end of February. The Mount Washington Backcountry Ski Festival is going on, and we're going to be the primary beer sponsor for that event.
Wow.
And we're going to be premiering a new IPA there. We're going to call it High George after Mount Washington.
Oh, I get it.
Oh, nice.
Excellent.
Yeah. So you'll be able to come and do all the stuff that the Ski Fest has to offer and drink some Reklis beer while you're there.
Who organizes that the backcountry ski festival?
SkiMountWashington.com. I don't know the name of the organization beyond that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll check it out. I'll throw that in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, we're very excited for that one.
What were the dates?
It's going to be from the 24th to the 27th.
Okay.
So it's 4 days, and they do classes. They'll take you out skiing. I think they do some avalanche stuff. Tickets are on sale.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll check that out. I wish I had the time to do stuff like that. I got to work, unfortunately. What about you, Stomp? You got time to do that?
Sometimes. I think all my free time goes towards search and rescue. Like I said, you know me. I'm just sitting here waiting. So I may have time occasionally, but it's usually on the couch.
Yeah. Now, were you making a lot of beer, Steve?
Yeah. We're still brewing several days a week. Naturally with the seasons up here, things slow down before the snow really kicks in. But now we got plenty of snow. People are coming up skiing, snowboarding, and drinking beer.
I've noticed this year, like the lines at Loon on video have been insane. Like that 8-person lift has done nothing to solve the lines there. So even with no snow.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people griping about Loon and Attitash as well, and a lot of those places that they were only open so many lifts or so many trails because of the poor snow conditions. But hopefully that's all better now.
Supply chain issues. You guys feeling any of that as it ripples across the country?
Some shipping is slow. Like we'll have to order things a week or two sooner than we would normally.
Huh.
But aside from that, it really hasn't been too big of a deal.
Yeah. I've got my finger on the pulse of the supply chain.
Oh, yeah?
I've asked about it for the last 2 or 3 episodes. Just keeping the listeners up to date.
There you go.
Stomp, keep your fingers away from everything.
Except this Margarita.
Yeah, exactly. So anything else, Steve? Anything beer related you want to cover before we get into snowshoes?
I'm sure there's probably some things I'm missing, but as far as big Reklis updates, that's what I got for you today.
Okay. Have you been in any rescues with Stomp? Is he like staying behind and not actually doing the work, pretending his hip's still injured, or is he pulling his weight now?
Well, without spoiling too much, I think there's only been one rescue in January, and I wasn't able to go to it, so I can't razz him about anything.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time we worked together, Steve.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, it has. Well, anyway, c'est la vie.
It'll be May and June soon enough. You guys will be out there every weekend.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Are you ready for SLASR's weekly gear review?
All right, so we're going to do a little bit of an addendum on our winter hiking stuff. We're going to talk about snowshoes. We can get some questions about snowshoes. And we touched on this, I think, on episode 1 of the winter hike intro, but we want to do more of a deeper dive on this. So
Now that the deep snow's here, or the deeper snow.
yeah, exactly. So I'm supposed to lead this discussion, so I think for reference, I think I kick it off, Stomp. What is your overall, I guess, philosophy around snowshoes in the winter and winter hiking? Granted, it may be a little bit different because you're sort of a search and rescue guy, but what are your sort of your philosophy around snowshoes?
Well, I mean, for search and rescue, they're on the pack anyway, and that's for when we have to go off trail. And in my own personal hiking endeavors, that's where I use them the most. Off trail, bushwhacking, that type of thing. I mean, it gets to the point when there's enough snow that you really should have them, just to avoid post holing all the time and to avoid pissing off everybody in snowshoes. The post holers are a unique breed. Those people that are adamantly against wearing snowshoes. And I will admit I used to be one, but now I understand them and appreciate them a little more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the same mind. I'm a little bit different because I think because I'm more of a weekend warrior and I'm down here in Massachusetts, and a lot of times in the winter I'm like coming up on the weekend. So I always, my thought is that you always bring them, unless you've had like, there's been an extended 4 or 5 day period where that there hasn't been any snow and you're going on a trail that's like going to be well traveled. A lot of times, yeah, you can get away with not bringing your snowshoes and you got to make that call. But 90% of the time they're riding on my pack and I use them if I need to. I mean, if I'm not sinking in snow, I'm going to put my spikes on and leave my snowshoes off because I don't like really walking with snowshoes. I feel like I'm a little bit bowed when I walk, and it gets a little uncomfortable after like 6 or 7 miles. But you get used to it. Mm-hmm. But overall, I'd say, yeah, just bring them from an etiquette perspective, like everyone's expecting you to have them. And if you're sinking in the trail at all, you should be wearing snowshoes so that you keep the trail nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with the bowing. It's like riding a horse.
Yeah, it's like it just causes your legs to spread out like just a little, like a couple of inches extra. And over time, it just sort of annoys. It gets annoying. It was like, it hit me the first time I used them for an extended amount of time. I was like, oh, I'm walking a little bow-legged, which makes sense because your legs are forced to be a little separated.
Esteban, any comment?
Yeah, I really fall right in line with you guys. 9 times out of 10, they're on my bag. But, I'm a bigger hiker, so I'll definitely bring them more often than not because I have a tendency to post hole. But, if I'm going up like the Crawford Path after a busy Saturday, I'll use my judgment and maybe I'll leave them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other thing too, and again, this comes down to if you know that you haven't had any snow and you're coming on a weekend and it's been 3-4 days and you're going on a trail that is pretty well traveled, like the Crawford Path, like you can get away with, maybe you're with 3 people, right? One person brings their snowshoes, right? Just in case to clean up your mess coming down the trail. You can kind of get away with that stuff occasionally. And we'll talk a little bit about mixing and matching things later on in this segment. But overall, when it comes to snowshoes, if you've never done it before, there's like 3 different types of general snowshoes, I think. There's these recreational snowshoes, which are generally like, you'll see them. They have like the aluminum bars that wrap around the entire binding, and then they typically have like it's not even like a very generic crampon. Like if you go into like Bartlett or you go into North Conway around that area and you want to like rent snowshoes, a lot of times like the recreational snowshoes is what they'll give you. They're just flat. They're not meant for climbing. Then there's like running and racing snowshoes, which I don't know a lot about. Stomp did a little bit of research and showed like Dion snowshoes. And I know in North Conway, they have a pretty active like winter snowshoeing race series that at least they used to. I don't know if they do it anymore, but for the purposes of hiking and what we're talking about, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be talking about trail snowshoes. And Stomp, do you want to talk about like what the typical characteristics of trail snowshoes are?
Well, that's a bit of a deep dive. Just back to the running and racing, I think the racing snowshoes are very similar in many ways to trail snowshoes. They're shorter length because you're dealing with more packed down snow versus deeper snow where you would need a longer snowshoe so that you don't sink in. So generally, between those two, the racing or the trails, you have anywhere between 17 to upwards of 30 inches of length. You have the crampons underneath that are going to grab the trail really well, and in some cases, some of the snowshoes have the side rails and things like that. The construction's different. You can get aluminum, like Mike mentioned. They're really tough, lightweight, with nylon decking. I think nylon decking is actually fairly common for a lot of snowshoes over different brands. The wood, I have a pair of old wood ones. They're like almost 4 feet tall, and I love them. They don't have any of these modern metal crampons on the bottom or anything. They're meant for deep snow, heavy as heck, and they sort of break. That's one problem with the wood. If you hit a rock just right, you're going to be stuck out there with a broken snowshoe. You have plastic, which tend to be a little, I guess the weight's probably negligible between plastic and aluminum. But with the plastic, they're strong. They're very strong. Some of these newer ones are pretty much all plastic. Like my MSRs are 100% plastic, and they can take a beating for sure. I don't know what Eva Foam Snowshoes are. This is something I came across. I guess it's probably a beginner snowshoe for maybe backyard adventures or that type of thing. It's a beginner snowshoe for gentle trails, modest snow depths. Have you ever heard of Eva Foam?
I haven't.
No, me neither.
Yeah, that's new by me, so interesting.
Yeah, and I have the plastic model. So I have MSR Evos, which are like the base model MSR. So really, when you talk about manufacturers for trail snowshoes, generally you're going to have Tubbs, MSR, and then TSL is sort of the new player in the market. And then you have these Dion snowshoes here linked as well. Stomp. I don't know anything about those, but I'd say like 95% of the people in that I've seen generally will use Tubbs or MSR. I don't know, Stephen, what do you use for snowshoes?
Yeah, when I'm hiking, I use the MSRs as well.
Yeah. So for whatever reason, they're popular, and like I have the MSR Evos, which are the base model, so they're about the cheapest that you can get from MSR that will really work for you in the mountains, and I think they're around $139. And the one differentiator that you want to think about is when you do get snowshoes. A lot of snowshoes offer a hail lift, so if you're going uphill, you can flip this hail lift up, and it'll give you like an extra 10 degrees or something like that, so that you're not like flexing your calf and your ankle to go uphill as much. Like it just basically allows you to be more level with the ground. So when you get into that, typically, like I think the MSR Evo Ascents are the ones that have the heel lift, and those end up costing around $209 or something like that. So you're essentially paying like an extra $80 for that little heel lift. But when you're climbing Valley Way or Lowe's Path in the winter, it's more than worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So do you hike without the heel lift then, Mike?
I never got. So my friend Jonathan, who got me into winter hiking, I said, I want to get in. I don't want to spend a ton of money, and I bought these MSR Evos probably like 8 years ago, and I didn't know anything about heel lifts, and I remember going. Matter of fact, I was hiking Sump. It was when me, you, and Chaga hiked Isolation. Is when I first saw those heel lifts.
Yeah.
And I saw somebody flip those on, and I was like, I need those. Yeah. And I was like, I can't wait till my snowshoes break, and I'll get the new pair. But it's been 8 years, and my snowshoes haven't broken yet.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get to use them too much. Mine maybe come out 3 or 4 times a season. I've got an old pair of Denali Classics. Like these, it was actually hand-me-downs from an upcoming guest who's going to be talking about military search and rescue. It's going to be an awesome episode. But these things are epic. They're like, I think they're probably 35 inches long, which I prefer. And just going back to how you size these things, if you're like under 50 pounds or 90, you probably want to be shooting for a shorter, like maybe 17-inch long snowshoe. 80 to 150 pounds, 22, 25 inches long, and up beyond that, if you're 200 and plus, you're probably looking at 30 to 35 inches, just to keep you floating. That's the whole purpose of the things.
Really, like if you're over, so you have here like 150 to 220. You're saying 25. I think mine are 22 inch, maybe the 25 inch. I can't remember what MSR Evos are.
Mm-hmm. It's a ratio between the weight and the length. I mean, if you're a 220 pound person and you're wearing a 17-inch snowshoe, you might as well just have crampons on. I mean, micro spikes on, for God's sakes. So it's just a ratio.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. MSR has like for 180 pounds for the Evo. So I make it. Although I got to stop eating, or I might break through that rating.
New Year's resolution.
Yeah, no, I'm not that bad yet. So
now, what kind of binding system?
I have the old strap bindings.
Yeah.
Again, mine are MSR, and I think most of the newer models have a new binding, but for me, it's just a strap, and it's like you just sort of hook the rubber strap into a metal
clip.
And then I had to add an extra clip because the strap thing flaps around, so I have like an extra one to hold my straps so that they don't move, because it's so annoying when they do.
I have a tip for that. Make sure the open side of the clip is facing forward, because you're moving forward. So if any branches that come by, you're just going to push the strap into the clip. Because I had mine set up initially backwards, and they were popping out constantly. I'm like, basic physics. Like, let me turn those around.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's a pretty simple thing, and I also shortened mine, so that helped a bit. How about yours, Steve?
Yeah, my snowshoes haven't been around as long as Mike's have, but I've got the same strap binding system, and I'm gonna use that tip of yours.
Yeah, it helps.
Yeah, I got I have mine right here.
Oh,
so
for the listeners' enjoyment, he's holding up a snowshoe in front of the camera.
Yeah, I should have this. So I have the two straps. So I got an extra clip where this one here comes out this way, and then this one comes out the bottom. So these things can't move at all.
So redundancy there. See, yeah, that's
redundancy, because
that's
otherwise,
like 5D chess.
The old way. I'm so proud of this. That's why I'm showing it to you guys. The old way is that this thing here flaps around when you're walking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a pain in the ass. So I'm going to post this.
I'm going to have to get 3 clips for my snowshoes.
Stomp. Don't try to outdo me. So I know my New Year's resolution was to like get off of social media, but the one thing that I do every year, and I'm so proud, is I always post like that advice for the 4,000 footer group. I'll be like, hey, just an FYI, if you have these, but now it doesn't work because all the new bindings are a different kind of binding, so I can't look like a hero anymore.
That's so great.
But I'll include a photo of this in the show notes.
Yeah, so like with the binding systems, we all have the straps, but there is the Boa system. My wife has a set. Basically, it's wrapped webbing that's adjusted by a simple dial. You just dial it into your tension, which is really cool, and you can just push the center of the button and it releases, so it's much quicker and it's less time consuming. And I've noticed what I've seen anecdotally is that people complain less about their feet getting numb. And that does happen to me occasionally, which is a pain in the butt. But so straps, boas, and then there's apparently a single pull binding, which is like a microspike webbing, plastic webbing that you pull over your shoe and you just sit right into it. I could see that being a problem with some more vigorous adventures, but that's available.
Yeah, I don't like the sound of that.
Yeah, I've not seen that, but it's out there somewhere. And I think we touched upon this earlier. Traction systems, you have the side rails, which are great for steeper terrain. Generally, most of the snowshoes have the center crampon, which rests under your forefoot, and it's just a bunch of teeth and the size of a hand. And if you can picture a hand grabbing a baseball, that's what it looks like, more or less. Flotation tails are cool. My Denali's have flotation tails, so I can go from like 30 inches up to 36 or 37 inches or whatever it may be, just by adding on this screw and tail. I think some other brands have that as well. So that can be handy, so you can adjust on the fly. If you're on a trail, then all of a sudden you're bushwhacking and you need that extra flotation. Those are really cool. Mike, how do you mount yours? That's always a problem. That's my biggest challenge, even with my gigantic pack.
That is so backpack specific.
I guess you're right.
It's tough to answer, but I think most people should look at, the way I do it is I would do like a progression. Is one, if you have a pouch, which I think the Ospreys have, and I've seen this, they have the pouch in the middle. If you can put them together and then stick them in the pouch and they won't go anywhere, I think that's the most optimal way to do it. Is if you can do that, that would be what I would go for if my pack allowed it. I'd never had an Osprey, so I had a Deuter Act Light. And for that, my best option was to mount the snowshoes on either side of so I have big pockets where I could put water bottles or whatever. The snowshoes will not fit in the pockets, but there's straps, compression straps on the lower part by the water bottle, and then on the upper part. And I'm able to strap one snowshoe with the crampon up against not facing the outside, but up against the backpack. So it's on either side, and I could cinch them down with the compression straps, and they wouldn't move at all. And then my third option is, if you don't have a pocket in the back and you don't have the ability to use the compression straps to strap the snowshoes on each side, then the third option is to strap them under your brain. So if you have a brain, or you have a strap on the very top with a roll top, strap them on the very top. And I now use I got a Hyperlight, which has that three-way compression strap on the very top. I just strap them across the very top. So, but the big thing you need to figure out is, one, can you maneuver them quickly off of your pack? Two, make sure that they don't damage anything on your pack. And then three, make sure that there's an equal distribution of weight, so that you're not going to. That's the one thing about the Ospreys that I would be a little bit weary about, is are you going to put so much weight far away from your back that you're going to feel like you're off kilter? So, but it's definitely something you got to practice a lot.
Yeah, my big pack has those side pockets, which actually cup the tail of the snowshoes really well. So from there, what I'll do is just use strapping with the buckles, that you can buy at Lahoots or anywhere really, Lowe's or whatever. So that works pretty well. I'd not thought of the putting it under the brain, but I'd be nervous about it getting unbalanced, and that's always just a mild annoyance, just having to stop and readjust all the time.
That's how I do mine. I don't have the brain. I have the straps on the roll top, and so what I'll do is to keep them from getting imbalanced is I'll put them, I guess, to describe it, head to toe.
Yeah.
So the toe will curve one way on the right and then the other way on the left. And I seem to stay pretty well in balance like that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've been playing with that with the Hyperlight backpack now, because I used to just I just slip one on either side, and it was pretty easy. But I find it's actually easier on those roll tops because they're right on top, and I can just grab them both and put them on. That's the other thing too, is like going back to the situation I had with my daughter last weekend. So Stephen, I don't know if you heard the last episode, but I took my daughter hiking, and the issue we had was that her hands got cold because it took us so long to get her gear put together. Like snowshoes is another example of like, if you're not comfortable with it, you know, you can end up taking 10, 15 minutes fiddling around with your snowshoes. And if you don't put your gear on, you can get cold. So you really want to practice putting your snowshoes on whatever your mounting system is on your backpack so that you're not wasting a lot of time fiddling around and learning how to do it on the trail.
I'm very jealous of all my friends who have that the new binding system where they just like twist it with one hand.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it was in one of your previous beginning to winter hiking episodes, Mike, where you were talking about just pull your bag out and just grab your snowshoes and just try a few different ways to put them on. I think that was a really good piece of advice.
Yeah, it is. It's so backpack specific that, you know, you'll get used to it after a while. And then I guess, Stomp, what about like field fixing shit in the field? Like what do you bring just in case your snowshoes crap the bed?
To me, it goes back to those thicker gauge tie wraps that we talk about all the time. They've saved me on multiple occasions, especially when using older snowshoes or the wooden ones. Remember that trip I did up to Flat Mountain Pond there, whatever it's called. One of the big ones. It's sort of you come by Waterville and you head up there. I was at the top. I was at the summit. And it was deep, like waist deep snow, and my wooden snowshoes broke. And all of a sudden, I'm just sinking on one side of my body, and I'm like, "Oh my God, what the hell am I gonna do?" It was like sub-zero weather, and I got out just by sort of tie wrapping it and micking it together. So, I mean, if you're in those situations with deep snow, you can't play around. You know, you just got to have something in there. So those are helpful. I'm not sure what else. I mean, when it comes to like breaking the crampons or the side rails, I mean, you're sort of up the creek if those go, but you really want to make sure that before you go out, you check the quality of your bindings and the strapping, just to make sure there's nothing that's going to give on you. I think that can really save a lot of headache.
Yeah. And if you're in the market for like buying, the biggest thing that I get concerned about with these, especially like mine are 8 years old, like this plastic stuff here, like I'm always nervous it's going to get brittle.
Yeah.
And and also you put a lot of torque on these things to sort of lock them down, and they're plastic straps and they stretch. And if you put it's the same thing with micro spikes. If you put a lot of pressure on them and you torque it too much, like you can easily rip these.
They sell those replacements. You can get them at LaHoots or wherever. I always say that because it's like the go-to up here in the North Country, but they're around. You can order them on Amazon. It's important. When I got these Denali Classics, the straps were brittle and I had to replace them. They were useless.
Cool. So I guess a couple of other things I added here on the notes here. So strategy when you're in a group. Mm-hmm. So I talked about this a little bit. So if you are going into a situation, so I've had a couple of scenarios where we did an overnight on Mount Kerrigan, and there was like a foot of snow, and there was 5 or 6 of us, I think, and we all basically knew that we were going to have to break trail. What's the name of that road? Sawyer Pond Road? Uh-huh. Sawyer. Is that the
Kerrigan?
road?
Sawyer River.
Yeah. So we knew we were going to have to break trail on the road, and then we had to break trail up to Signal Ridge. So it was brutal, but we all 6 of us brought our snowshoes, and you do it when you have to do a trail break like that where it's a foot of snow. What you want to do is basically just you take the lead. One person is actually breaking trail, and then number 2, 3, and 4 are generally cleaning up the trail, and then number 5 and 6 are having sort of like they're walking on broken trail by then. So what you want to do is that front person goes for 5-10 minutes, and then they step aside. And then number 2 becomes number 1. It's the same strategy as you would use when you're riding Peloton on a bike, where you have somebody leading and then everyone's drafting behind them. Same thing you do when you're breaking trail. It doesn't matter if there's 6 people or 5 people or 1 or 2. What you want to do is just keep rotating that front person if you're truly breaking trail. And then the other thing that I will call out is I've done this when we did Israel Ridge. We had to break trail up Israel Ridge on another overnight in the winter, and it was like nobody goes up Israel Ridge. Jonathan, I still know what the hell you were thinking dragging our asses up there, but we went up to Grey Knob via Israel Ridge. Nobody had been up there all winter, so we had to break trail. So I had my snowshoes. There are sections, and this comes into play with like Lion's Head too on Mount Washington, but sometimes you run into sections that are so deep that you actually need to break trail using crampons instead of snowshoes. So sometimes, depending on how steep it is, you will break trail using real crampons versus snowshoes because it gets so deep that what happens is you can't sink in with your snowshoes, so you need at least one person breaking trail with crampons to lead the way. So that's kind of one of the lessons I learned when we did that Israel Ridge trip.
And just for the listeners that are looking for a little more SAR content, we talked about this with Ty Gagney, but during that last traverse, for instance, what search and rescue teams will do, some teams will go up in deeper snow just to tamp down the snow in preparation for the more advanced teams to show up and get to the summit or the ridge. The classic example when they were trying to get up on Franconia Ridge. So PEMI was breaking trail, Fish and Game officers were breaking trail, and then later MRS and some of the other teams showed up. So that's a strategy that we'll use, like Mike was talking about, just breaking that trail down for easier access.
Yeah. And typically, I think I've read, and some listeners can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the Lion's Head route is broken out strictly with crampons. They don't even use snowshoes because it's just too steep up there. But you want to make sure that if you're going to be in steep environments, have your snowshoes, but sometimes you got to bail on them and just switch over to crampons, or at least have one person in crampons that can start the way for you.
Yeah, they can become a safety hazard in some steeper rocky terrain.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of safety hazard, we're going to talk about butt sledding in a minute, but anything else on snowshoes before we move on to the butt sledding?
I think I have one very niche instance where you don't switch breaking trail. That's when you're hiking with Steve Mason.
Yeah.
Because that beast just breaks trail the whole way.
Yep. I could see that.
It's an easy ride for everybody else in the group.
That's the exception, yeah. And he loves it. He's like, give it to me.
Oh my God, wouldn't have it any other way.
Exactly, yeah. Oh God.
Well, that's the thing too, is that the people that are local or the frequent hikers, like 9 times out of 10, when there's a big storm, like the next day or that day, you've got all the locals are going out and breaking. Like the chance of you having to break trail on like Crawford Path is almost slim to none. Like there's always locals out there breaking out those trails. So it's the trails like Israel Ridge that like no one goes up, that you can have a fun time on, but you just need to be prepared. And I like the rotation process, but if you can find a Steve Mason, or like I know if I went with my wife, I'd have to break trail the whole way. So,
or if you went with me.
Matter of fact, that's true. Stop. I had to do that. Remember?
Yeah,
when
man.
We did Mount Parker. You made me break trail the whole way.
Dude, that was like the worst. I was just gassed out from the get-go. Like literally.
Well,
it was the worst.
So, Steve, I took him out Mount Parker, and we had no view, and I was like, this sucks. But it was a fun day, but Stomp was a trooper. But I think that was when his hip was really starting to throw on him, and he was just too proud to admit that he was just getting old and needed a hip replacement.
God, that was...
Hey, gotta have a bad day sometimes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, so this dude broke it straight to the summit and then straight back. And if anybody's done that trail, it drops down to a call, and then you have to go up another couple hundred feet. So that's when Mike was like, "Ooh, starting to fade out a little bit." That was a hard day. It was snowing, and wow.
Yeah, there was nobody. That's another good hike if you want to go and break trail and not see anybody. Mount Parker. No one's going up there in the winter.
No kidding.
SLASR's hiking topic of the week.
All right, so butt sledding. So I need to start this discussion off with my friend Jonathan, who foolishly convinced me to go up Israel Ridge. I just have to speak on his behalf because he's the guy that got me into winter hiking. He absolutely hates butt sledding because, and it does make sense, like it ruins it makes the trail so friggin' dangerous because you're like basically like just making like an ice luge of the trail. So Stomp,
that's what I
Steven,
noticed.
You guys need to defend butt sledding on John, and I'm talking on Jonathan's behalf.
Yeah, all right, sure, I'll defend it, but I agree with you about that because I noticed that when I went up Jennings a couple weeks ago. It was like just like you said, just glare ice wherever the butt sledders are sledding. So man, but that being said, I love it, man. It's the quickest way down the mountain.
People are allowed to have fun, right? That's all there is to it.
It gets you to Reklis a little quicker than you may have. Yeah, man.
Hike your own hike, I guess.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, it's funny. I've done it. It's fun. It's a little bit risky depending where you are. Like I have fond memories of butt sledding, and I call myself a purist because I don't use a sled. I just sit on my butt like the good old fashioned way. Yeah. And take all the bumps and bruises as they come. And like Liberty Springs Trail comes to mind. Holy moly, my wife and I had so much fun coming down that. There was one time she and I actually did that. What's that tram line? Oh, DJ's Tram at Cannon. My wife is crazy. You think I'm nuts sometimes. This gal's crazy. We bushwhacked up in the winter DJ's Tram. And then from there, we went over to the trail system and butt sledded straight down Avalanche, like the steepest trail on that mountain. And you pick up speed, man. You're on your butt and you're doing like 40 miles an hour. It's incredible. The snow blasting up in your face. You're blind. It's crazy. Talk about like an injury waiting to happen, though. I mean, that's why it was sort of safe on Cannon. Not that I'm encouraging anybody to do this, but yeah. So it has its pluses and minuses. You can get seriously effed up, especially if you're on like a narrow trail like Liberty Springs. You hit a tree, bam. You're going to be seeing search and rescue, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know if I can defend it now that I have ranted on.
The only defense is people allowed to have fun. So
yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
From a search and rescue perspective, I guess you'd have to say like it does add an element of risk.
You think?
I guess.
Oh God, it's too funny. Have you had any experiences butt sledding, Steve?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think most of the times when I'll decide to go butt sledding is when I've already fallen and decided, well, at this point it's steep enough. I've already taken a slip. I'm just going to go down on my butt. That seems to be, I don't know, maybe I don't know about the safest way, but
sometimes,
like you said, definitely the fastest way.
Well, sometimes it can be safety, like just a ledge or whatever. You have to sit down sometimes if there's no reasonable alternative to bushwhack around the side of a obstacle. I get that, yeah.
Right, but I'm right there with you. If I'm going to be butt sledding, it's definitely not going to be with a sled. You see some people out just want any excuse to use a butt sled. I was on Star King last weekend and saw people hiking up with butt sleds. There's not a whole lot of butt sledding on Star King.
Wouldn't plastic exacerbate the risk of injury just in terms of speed?
Yes.
I would assume it would be faster.
Oh, you'd go way faster. Yeah, totally.
Oh, man. Too funny. Well, so that being said, we recommend the following butt sleds. If you're gonna do it,
I'll add these to the show notes.
You can put a disclaimer in there.
Yeah, I did some research and I found there's flexible flyer snow seat. There's a snow sled board, and then there's a little bit larger one called Sport Stuff Rocket. I'm sure there are others out there, but do your research if you're interested in getting a butt sled and going much faster and really getting injured. That's great.
Yeah. So I generally recommend if you are going to butt sled, like I feel like it's worth it to get one of those just cheap, they're either little shovels. Typically they're like a little butt shovel that like has a little like plastic bendable
dual purpose.
It's got it's like it almost looks like a a toilet seat cover, but it's thin, and it's got like a little handle that you can hold onto in the front through your legs. And that's typically what I would carry because it weighs nothing, and you can just sort of strap it onto your backpack and then have it when you go down. And when people think of butt sledding, I think you just need to get it out of your head that you're going to be going down, like when we were kids, you would go down a hill and you do whatever, a 2-3 minute slide, and then you'd run back up the hill. Like, this is basically like you got to pick your moment. So it's a lot of like, the last time I did it, like I remember waking up the next morning and I was like, I felt like I had done like 50 million sit-ups, because you're getting up and you're getting up and you've got a 20-pound backpack on your back too, and then you're like sliding down, and then you're getting back up and then sitting down, getting back up, and you do that like 20 different times because you're only doing like short sections of the trail. But I will say probably my most enjoyable memory butt sledding in the Whites, and I've done it a few times, is we did a hike up on Mountain Madison. Stomp, you were with us when we did that with Casey and Ed and
Danielle,
and Nick, I think, and we saw Danielle and Corey Hempel and that whole crew there.
Yeah, Matt.
Do you remember that?
Matt Scaganey. I mean, the whole crew of people. That was fun.
Yeah, exactly. So Ed had some butt sled, so I took one and we went down. We butt sled. That was, matter of fact, where I saw Oscar the dog, the basset hound.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember that day.
Yeah.
We saw Oscar. But there's a section of Valley Way where, I'm not lying, like you will butt sled. It's like sort of at a perfect angle. And the other thing about butt sledding is you want to wait until there's a good snowpack and the trail is broken and it keeps you in the trail like a luge. On Valley Way, there's a section where you can go, I think we must have gone like 4 minutes straight just going down. And it was probably like over a half a mile of sledding on Valley Way that we went down, which was amazing. So that was probably the most enjoyable that I've done. But get yourself a cheap, they usually come in 3-packs. Get yourself a cheap one. It's almost the size of like a trash cover or whatever. And you just throw it on your backpack and you can use it whenever you want.
Excellent.
It makes the trail like so icy and dangerous, though.
It does. Yeah, for sure. And please don't try to do like a gully or anything stupid like that, or tucks. Has anybody butt sledded tucks? I'm sure somebody's done it.
Not purposely.
I don't know.
My goodness. Crazy.
That's a pretty chance.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I have seen videos of people that have gone down that ski trail, the Sherburne, in one continuous video. Yeah. They've gone from the Hermit Lake all the way down the ski trail.
Wow.
In a continuous video.
That's cool.
On a butt sled?
On a butt sled, yeah.
Holy moly.
Yeah. It was like 10 minutes long or something. I don't even know how long. I'll try to find a video and post it.
Okay. Well, there we go. We covered butt sledding. We're breaking new ground here. This is great.
Yeah.
So
a couple of other things, safety notices, Stomp.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you're wearing true crampons, I would not recommend butt sledding.
True.
Microspikes only.
Yeah.
And just be aware with the microspikes.
Because then you'll be cartwheeling down the hill.
Yeah. And also just be aware with the microspikes, do not like dig your heels in too deeply, because you'll catch and you'll go ass over tea kettle, I guess is the saying. So you got to be careful. The other thing is that, those snowshoes we talked about, Steve, how you have them mounted over your brain?
Yeah.
They're not going to help you butt sledding. Like the way, if you have them mounted off the side, you can kind of lean back and have the snowshoes act as a brake for you too.
Oh, smart.
Yeah.
Wow.
Epic. Very cool. Very cool.
Very cool. Very cool. So that's butt sledding for you folks. Send us some videos of butt sleds. We want to see them.
Instead of cat videos and cat pictures, let's move on to butt sledding.
Yes, exactly.
Please.
Let's dive into some White Mountains history, shall we?
All right, so now we're going to move on to segment 3 here, Stomp. So you wanted to do something on Flume?
Yeah, let's do Flume Gorge. I just wanted to touch upon it briefly. It's one of my favorite places, and I think a lot of us know about it, but I thought it might be nice to dig into it a little bit. Flume Gorge, not Flume the mountain, but Flume Gorge, which is in the southern end of Franconia Notch. If you haven't been there, you should check it out. It's open year-round. you're paying for a ticket during the summer months. I believe it runs from May to October 20th. But it's open year-round, so if you want to get in there in the winter, it's an amazing place to check out. The gorge itself is 800 feet long, with cliffs that are about 70 to 90 feet high, made of what they call Conway Granite. The canals themselves are like 12 to 20 feet wide. It was discovered in 1808 by a 93-year-old Aunt Jess Gwesney. I believe that's the way you pronounce her name. And she was out there fishing. And can you believe that? She's out there at 93 years old in the 1800s, just, I don't know, fly fishing or whatever. And she discovers this amazing site.
How does someone get to be 93 years old back then? Like, how do you live without your appendix bursting and dying? Like having like a toothache that turns into like an abscess and dying? Like, how do you avoid all that shit when you're that age?
It's incredible.
Back in those days.
It's that good country living, I guess. I don't know.
I guess.
Yeah, she wasn't drinking Reklis back then, that's for sure. She was probably drinking that stuff from that guy up in Crawford Notch. What was that guy's name again?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. English Jack.
Hermit Jack. Yeah.
That's right. So anyway, her family didn't believe her, so she eventually dragged her family up. And at the time, there was this massive 10-foot by 12-foot rock that was stuck maybe like 20 feet up between the two cliff walls. Just an amazing thing. So 1808, apparently, I mean, this is deep stuff beyond me, but it's like 200 million years old. It dates back to the Jurassic period. And there's a process for this granite, this Conway granite. Apparently it was deeply buried molten rock. And it cooled, and then these dikes of basalt formed that pressed up against the granite, forcing the granite to actually smooth out. It was buried over during the Ice Age, and then as the Ice Age receded and the glaciers receded, it formed all these glacial erratics, and that boulder that was stuck apparently between the two cliff walls was one of those erratics. It's 2 miles in length. Following COVID, I guess what they've done is they've made it a one-direction loop, so they closed off a couple trails. Here are some of the places you can check out. There's Avalanche Falls. It's a 45-foot tall waterfall that was formed back in 1883. Now, this ties back to that hike I did with Jimmy Chaga. So apparently in 1883, there was a massive storm, and it caused that slide off of Mount Liberty that Jimmy and I bushwhacked. So that's when apparently that boulder came down into the canal of the cliffs. And yeah, that storm itself actually pushed that boulder out. It was so fierce that it just got washed out and has disappeared. Nobody knows where that rock went. After you walk through the main entryway, after you get your ticket and all that stuff during the warmer months, there's a beautiful Sentinel Pine Bridge, they call it. And it was built in 1886 and apparently was restored several times because of weather and this and that. It overlooks a beautiful pond, which is 40 feet deep, 150-foot diameter with 130-foot high cliffs on either side. Have you guys been there?
I've been there
long time ago.
A few times with the kids. Yeah, it was awesome. I remember going and having a blast.
It's incredible, man. It really is. They call this Sentinel Pine Bridge Kissing Bridge because the way it's built with the wooden columns and whatnot, there are a lot of like shadowy alcoves where you could kiss your lover and everything else. There's also Table Rock, which is a section of Conway Granite, which is just beyond that bridge, and that's 500-foot length by 70 feet wide. Another beautiful just section of Conway Granite. There's Bear's Cave. There's Cascade Brook Falls.
Yeah, it's a cool place, and it's one of those places that I recommend, especially if you like want to get your kids interested in hiking. Like I think we did the Flume Gorge. We did, and you got to pay a little bit, I think, for these. It's like a New Hampshire.
Yeah, it's like $18
tourist attraction or whatever. Yeah, but it's worth it. The Polar Caves is another one that's up a little farther south. But all those activities are like amazing for the kids to do, and it really like they never get tired on these ones because there's so much sort of climbing around on stairs and so much to see that there's no risk of them being bored. All right, well, next segment here. So I want to do one more. So we'll skip search and rescue, and I'll hold off on the history stuff, but I wanted to just close out with a discussion on winter hiking on Mount Washington. So I get this question a lot from people about, what's the best route to take in the winter for hiking Mount Washington. So my answer to this, and I don't know if you guys have a different opinion, but I always recommend going up Ammonoosuc. And then taking you stop at Lake of the Clouds, you can go to Mount Monroe if you want to tag that, and then head up to, I think it's the Davis Path, to the top of Mount Washington, and then pick it whether you want to go down the Jewel Trail or the COG. So I want to talk a little bit about this route, unless you guys disagree with me and feel like there's another route that's a better option for people to hike in the winter.
I think the caveat is, Ammonoosuc Trail can have some serious ice, and if you don't have the right traction, you're effed. I mean, you're going to be forced to go towards Jewel, and if you run into bad weather, it sort of puts you in a pickle. So that's my one caveat: make sure you have good weather, make sure you have the right traction, because going counterclockwise, you're committed at some portions of the year.
Yeah, and that is the tricky part. Is you're right. That's a fair caveat. Is that I think if it's been snowing or the weather has not been too extreme, I think you're fine going up Ammonoosuc. I'd say like 85% of the time, you're going to be fine on Ammonoosuc. If it's broken out, you can get away with like sort of kick stepping in with micro spikes, or if you've got your crampons, you switch over to crampons. But I would recommend on this hike that you're going to have, the one drawback is you're probably going to have to bring all three with you, is crampons, micro spikes, and snowshoes, just because you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And the snowshoes a lot of time are like a waste, but you should bring them with you just because you might run into some serious drifts as you approach Lake of the Clouds. But the other drawback is that sometimes, especially if it hasn't been snowing up there, like that section between the sort of the West Side Trail junction as you go up Davis, that can get super bony and like icy. And I remember we had, oh God, I'm going to forget her name. When we had the hiking buddies on, we had Ben and I forget her name now. I apologize. She was the one that told us that story about how she had gone up, and as she was, her friend was climbing up the Davis Path towards Mount Washington, they had gotten into an extreme ice situation, and it let loose, and she didn't have an ice axe or anything with her, and she got really spooked out and almost went for a ride down the Ammonoosuc ravine. So you do kind of have to bring all three. But for me, pick your weather, make sure the weather conditions are good, it's not too cold, and just if it's been like rainy or like icy conditions, then maybe take a second look at it. But overall, like if it's been snowing out and the conditions have been okay, then I think going up Ammonoosuc's okay.
Yeah, well, I could be wrong about this, but I think it's the only like modest loop on that mountain, if you think about it. I mean, I've done it, I've done different loops, say, go up Glen Boulder and then down Auto Road or something like that. But Ammo to Jewel is really, it's like what, you don't have the car spot. It's a loop. I can't think of any other modest options.
Especially in the winter,
Yeah.
I just get nervous about going on the Pinkham Knot side in the winter, because even if you go up Boot Spur, like I was reading the other day, like a lot of times that's not broken out. Although I do know, I've read Mike Cherum has talked about like a Redline Guiding that they do recommend going up that way, so maybe you get lucky and it is broken out. But otherwise, like then you got to go up Lion's Head. That's more that's more of a mountaineering ascent.
Yeah.
Nelson Crag's not going to get anything. You can go up Glen Boulder, but no one's going to be going that way.
Well, that could be an out and back. I mean, that would be my second option. If you don't want to pull off the loop and the weather's sort of iffy, just do an out and back. Grab one of the other peaks or something. Yeah. Jefferson, Pierce.
Yeah, exactly. But I think if you do your research, it's a good day. Go up Ammonoosuc. Be prepared to bring all three devices with you. You can probably get away with micro spikes and snowshoes on most days, but like Stomp, you're right. There's a couple of sections of Ammonoosuc where you really got to kick step in hard with micro spikes, and sort of you don't have a lot of play to mess around. There's like 2 or 3 sections right below that like water crossing before you get above tree line that are really steep and get crazy. And I see people carrying ice axes. I never brought an axe with me, but so I don't really know. I mean, I suppose you could use one, but I've never used it.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's like if you get to Lake of the Clouds and all of a sudden the weather goes south, and you don't have the right gear to get down that trail, man. It's not a good situation.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a little risky. So hopefully I don't get anyone killed with this. But the other thing is like when you do get to Lake of the Clouds, the nice thing is you do get a little bit of a, you can hang out there. There's some nice pictures in that particular area, and you can reassess. I mean, the other bailout option that you have is if you really get in trouble, you could try to make your way down the Edmonds Path, I suppose. But anyway, so up Ammonoosuc, I recommend, the other thing about this route is that it gives you the option, you get two options. You can either park at the Cog or you can park at the Ammonoosuc Ravine. I personally, I'm going to get shit for this, and I'm sure people, the purists are going to yell at me, but I recommend you park at the Cog. And two reasons. One is it's a little bit shorter, and every quarter mile counts. And then the other thing is that, and I don't know if this is true now with COVID or not, but they let you inside the building in the morning. So if you want to gear up, go inside the Cog, and you can get geared up nice and warm. You can use the bathroom. You can get coffee or hot chocolate or whatever you want, and then you just head up on your way. So you're supporting the Cog a little bit, and then you're saving a little bit of distance.
Gotcha. But in the summer, you can't park at the Cog, right? Because there's a specific...
You can now for $10 per person.
Oh, okay. Year round.
Not per car, per person.
10 per person. So, and I know people have a mixed opinion about the Cog, but I always give them a pass because I feel like they do step up. Like if there is a rescue that needs to happen, like they do tend to like step up when they need the help. So I don't knock the Cog ever, even though I know people have issues with them.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Hey, this is a hell of an episode. We covered a lot of ground.
Yes, we did. I'm not done yet.
This is our fastest known time for an episode with so many topics.
Yeah, but I'm not done talking about the loop here.
I was trying to cut it short here. All right, go ahead, Mike.
Are you getting bored?
Oh, no, not at all.
God, Jesus. All right, so on this route here, a couple of other things that like the other thing you need to think about here is that you do have a bailout option. If you get to Lake of the Clouds and then you're making your way up Mount Washington and you've got someone that's bonking on you, you can bail out on the West Side Trail. So you get to that section where the West Side Trail junction happens. You can just basically skirt around the top of the Ammonoosuc Ravine. That'll loop you around to the Cog. And then from there you can hop over the Cog Railroad and get to Jewel Trail. Or
go down the
you
Cog.
can go right down the Cog.
Yeah.
So that's the other question is like, do either one of you guys have an opinion on, do you prefer to go down the Cog or do you prefer to go down the Jewel Trail?
Boy, that's a bad
I've
choice.
I've only been down the Cog in like springtime where there's snow up top and then it turns to dirt. But I think if the situation calls for it, like you said, Mike, if you got someone who's in trouble, that's definitely the fastest way off the mountain.
Yeah, I've not done the Cog, so I really can't speak to it. But I do know that there's that one section near Jacob's Ladder that can dip you right into a gully. That's sketchy, a dangerous section.
It's super sketchy. And one of the biggest risks that I ever took probably out hiking was going across that section. So I've done it like 4 times, and I've gone down the Cog every time. And 3 out of the 4 times I was wearing snowshoes or micro spikes or whatever, and I was okay. And there was enough snow there where I was able to bite and go across that section. I think it's near Jacob's Ladder, and it's basically this section where if you go, you're going down in the ravine. Matter of fact, that happened to a hiker that's a very experienced hiker a couple of years ago, and it's scary as hell. Mm-hmm. But I remember I went with my brother and my sister-in-law, and I went right across that in my microspikes, and my sister-in-law picked it up right away, and she was like, this is sketchy as hell. And I was like, we didn't have crampons with us, and I just told her, I was like, Marissa, just go, it's no big deal. Like, I downplayed the risk there, which I probably shouldn't have, but it took her a while to get across it. So there is that one section, but after that, it's pretty much like going, you can go straight straight down, it's a quick hit. But if you're really freaked out by risks, then you're better off doing the longer hike down the Jewel Trail or the Jewel Trail, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yep. And lately, I don't know if you guys know Eric Todd Sweet, but he can carry you up and down. He does that trail every other day, the cock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's been on a tear on that.
He's out there a lot.
Cranking it out.
Yeah. And it seems like every week he's out there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could get out more.
Yeah, when's your next hike, Mike?
I'm going to get out this weekend. I'm going to go. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about doing this route we were just talking about on Mount Washington.
Okay. I'm going to try to get out tomorrow. It's supposed to be like an inch of snow, but I'm going to do this little bushwhack to the west of Welch Dickey. I've done it before. It's Fisher Mountain. So I'm going to try to go park at the Welch Dickey parking lot and take Dickey Notch by, I forget the name of the trail, but it's like a bike path, and then bushwhack straight up to Fisher and then back. So it's 3 miles one direction, so it's pretty modest. So wish me luck. Hopefully I'll get off my couch.
Nice, yeah. The other thing I was thinking about was Mount Cube, maybe going up the, I forget the name of that trail. It's like based on The Hobbit. I forget what it's called.
Not sure.
So we'll see. I'm going to get out this weekend, though. I've been itching.
All right. Awesome. Well, Steve, thanks for coming out, and give our best to everybody at Reklis. And we'll have you back again. And Mike, feel better getting over your Rona.
Yeah, hopefully I wasn't too low energy tonight. I just it is hard. Don't get Corona, people. Do not get COVID.
Oh, you were pretty much the same as usual. Just low energy the whole time. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, hope you have a good recovery, Mike. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
You bet.
Yeah, definitely. And we got to get together. We'll have some beers at Reklis and get out there and do some hiking soon. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, it sounds great. I'd love that.
Awesome. Till next week.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered on today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information on SLASRpodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until next time, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words that describe this race. Do we all know what they are? Only one hill!
Here's Lieutenant James Neeland, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.